Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone! Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Appreciate you joining us as always, no matter where and how you're listening. Stay warm is the key right now. That and don't have a heart attack shoveling snow. You always hear that. I remember hearing that when I was a kid. Not of kids, but other people going out shoveling snow and having a heart attack or something. I'm like, gee whiz, man, it's not that big of a deal. Just take it slow. It's certainly exercise, though. That's a fact. Exercise of the kind that I can't stand. I do not like being cold. Not at all. But that kind of happens in the wintertime. You don't really have a choice of the matter. The great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News joins us now. Mike, how are you, sir? Happy New Year, by the way. I guess this is first time we've spoken since the New Year, right? Can't remember.
I think that's right. Yes,
yeah,
that is
we were
right.
off because we were off. Yeah, we were off. So there we go. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jim. How are you?
I can't complain. I've been doing it, but I can't. It doesn't do me any good. Dude, did you guys get any snow in Pittsburgh?
We did. But not like I understand my old neighborhood in Fishers did. I think we got altogether probably about 3 inches, maybe 4, maybe 4. In small doses, though. It keeps making me go out and shovel the driveway.
You got the Christmas snow.
We got snow.
Not what I call Christmas snow, just enough to make it look nice.
Yes. Well, yeah, but it also, what it's done is it keeps coming in like inch and a half doses, so that you have to go out and
that's the aggravating snow.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, ours did not come in that fashion. Ours started and it did not stop. I kept looking out, going, "Is it? I think it stopped." Nope, it hadn't stopped. And I've not even stepped outside. But I'm surmising that we got about 10 inches here.
My gosh.
The eyeball.
My goodness.
But hey, you know what? Mike, when I was a kid, and I don't know where you were back at the late 70s, early 80s, but when I was a kid, dude, we got pounded. Like 3 years in a row. I remember missing 3 weeks of school, and then all of a sudden that doesn't happen so much anymore. So it's kind of cool to see it, but for some reason I don't have the fascination with it that I did when I was a kid.
Definitely not. My wife and I went to a baptism, my great nephew's baptism, on Saturday, and they had gotten in West Virginia, but this was before the big snow. But we were leaving the church, and there was this young boy, and I think his older brother, and they had one of those plastic sleds, not like with it was, I don't know what you call it, because we never had them when we were kids. It's hard plastic.
A toboggan?
No, it's, I guess it would be sort of a toboggan, but it's not, because the toboggans were always made of wood and had that little curly front thing. But this is just like almost a plastic,
just like a garbage can lid, concaved.
It's like almost rectangle shaped, except it's rounded at the ends. I never knew what they called them, because, like I said, they didn't have these when we were kids. But they were getting ready to go down the hill right by the church. And it's like, it reminded me of like when we were kids and we used to do our sled riding, and they don't let you do this anymore, but we used to do our sled riding on the country club that was like a mile from my house. We used to, and they let us do it.
Nice.
We were not trespassing. They let us do it. And then when I got to be older, then they said, hey, wait a second, this is supposed to be a great golf course. We can't let them do this anymore, so they don't. But it was a great place. You slid across the 10th and 18th fairways, and it reminded me very much of that. It was fun when you were a kid, and when it would take you out of school and all of that. Not as much fun when you're an adult, although the telecommuting world has helped a lot with that. Because I don't ever have to worry about getting out and driving in the snow if I don't want to.
Absolutely. I'm here, and I'm all about it. All about it. Earlier I was talking about there were only a couple of games in the Big Ten last night, but both of them wound up being very tight. A little surprisingly tight, as a matter of fact. Up in Minnesota, Ohio State goes in there and ends up having to fight through 2 overtimes to come out with a win. You know, I've talked about how tough, and we always do, about playing on the road in the league and all of that. And this year, it to me is going to be even harder than normal. This is an example of, I don't know if this is an example of that or just happened to be a good game by Minnesota, but it took all that Ohio State had to get out of there in 2 overtimes, 89-88. And then Wisconsin sneaks the win out of Rutgers because Dylan Harper's still fighting the effects of the flu. So big time road wins by both of these teams that are going to come into of great importance, more so than any other year. I think this year it's going to mean more.
I think you're right, Jim. You look at the opening of the SEC's road or a regular season schedule that happened on over the weekend, mostly on Saturday, and how many of the teams that are tournament contenders that went on the road and got, for lack of a better word, obliterated. Texas, Arkansas, there were some lost, like Florida lost on the road. It was their first loss. They played very competitively at Kentucky, but so many teams just got absolutely destroyed. Northwestern, which has played very well with some bad luck, but has played very well in various games, went to Purdue and got handled pretty comfortably on Sunday. So you're seeing a great disparity in home road performance, maybe as much as profound as I can remember. I'm not going to say it's the biggest of all time. We don't have enough of a sample size yet, but really profound difference between home and road at this stage. We have, like I said, we only have a very small sample size. That some of the leagues, most of the leagues played 1 to 2 regular season games, major leagues I'm talking about, in December. And the SEC just began its schedule over the weekend. So we have very limited sampling right now. But I'll be interested to see if that holds up over the course of the year, if those disparities hold up as they have.
Yeah, and looking forward to as this league moves forward. And I remember early on thinking, all right, I kind of thought who I knew was going to be fighting at the top. Then quickly I realized that, nope, just take that all away. Shut up. Then I was like, okay, I've got 9 teams. I'm just going to put my hand into a pocket or into a bowl and pull out a name almost. But then UCLA started kind of rising to the top for me. Illinois is up there. But at the end of the day, I still don't know. UCLA still looking pretty strong. They go on the road. That was a big road win at Oregon for them.
Right.
But Illinois did the same thing. So I'm like, okay, those two teams are kind of rising for me a little bit. UCLA and Illinois are kind of squeezing to the top. But that doesn't mean a lot when the margin of difference is about that much.
I'm interested that you did not include Michigan State in that conversation.
Well, that's only because I forgot, because there are so many. Seriously, there are so many, especially with the new teams. You're like, okay, I can't forget the new teams that were added. And it's like, there are others that I'm like, I don't, there's Michigan could win the damn thing for all that goes. It's that not complicated, but it's that competitive.
Yes, absolutely. I at this point in the season, I mean, I would consider Michigan State my favorite, but my partner Rafael Davis at the Big Ten Network often advocates for Maryland. There are lots. I think you can make a case for Oregon, although the 2 home losses are going to make that very difficult. As you mentioned, UCLA. Look, we're having this conversation to Indiana fans. I don't think you can rule them out. I know they have played really poorly at times.
I was looking forward to talking to them because they're a team. At the beginning, they were in my top based on the talent they had. Then all of a sudden you saw that they were doing the same thing that they've done. And I'm like, this team sucks. They don't have the chemistry, not the talent. It's not the talent. They're not playing together. Then all of a sudden, Mike Woodson was forced to play what a lot of people have been wanting to see, one big at a time. And as a matter of fact, I did put some numbers to paper yesterday, as a matter of fact. And with Malik out the last 2 games, that's a small sample size, and I'm not going to get excited about it. But Ballo goes for 25-13, 17-12 in those 2 games. Indiana's 3-point shooting in those 2 games alone, they were 21 of 50 for about 41%. That's pretty daggone good. Yes. Now, previously, when you had Reneau in and Ballo was not in for one of those games, he goes for 14-7, 14-8. The 3-point shooting for Indiana, 6 of 40. I don't know what the relationship is there, but it's a small sample size and could be very coincidental, but I don't think so. I think because of having one big, Reneau's been replaced by Luke Goody. That's not the same kind of player at all. No. So that changes everything.
One of the reasons it's worked, and I will confess that I thought Luke was an 18-minute player. And I was convinced of that he was a guy who was very valuable for those 16 to 18 minutes, but that I'd come to believe that based on his career progression, that was his ceiling, that on a good team, I mean, not that he couldn't go somewhere on a 500-ish team and play 28 to 30 minutes and average double figures. He's a good enough player to that, but on a good team, I'd come to the conclusion that he was an 18-minute guy. And he has blown that away in this period when he's played more minutes as a result of absences. He is playing extremely well. He is embracing the increased responsibility of having to play 25 to 30 minutes, and what that does to his role. He's handled it, and he was brilliant in Philadelphia over the weekend. Just phenomenal. I mean, he was probably, if you look at it, as big a difference maker in that game as anybody this side of Ballo. He was. I thought that Luke making 3 3-pointers, getting 7 rebounds. That's just phenomenal. And I think they look like a more functional basketball team with one big. And it wouldn't work at all if Luke wasn't handling it like this. And I'm not saying he's going to score, 14 points and hit three-pointers in every game from now on. That's not the charge. It's you don't have to do that every night. No shooter. I've said this a zillion times. No shooter ever goes through a season without having rough nights. Steph Curry has rough nights. And so that he's not going to be like that and when he's not, he's not an elite defender and he's not an elite rebounder. But even at that, he still forces you to defend Indiana a different way because you have to honor him. He's as good a shooter as there is in the Big Ten, give or take. And so you have to honor him. That opens up space, that allows Trey Galloway to get to the lane, that allows Miles Rice to get to the lane. And they're a different basketball team. I love Malik Reneau as a college basketball player. He is
it's nothing to do with a knock on him.
If of all players on that team, he's the last one that I would want to say that I would want to criticize because his effort and his commitment have never been in question from the time he walked on the floor in 3 years ago. Just terrific. But I do think that Indiana is more functional offensively when they are able to put Luke Goody and stretch the floor. You watch Kentucky. Why are they able to score 100 points almost every time they get on the floor? Because they always have 4 shooters out there. They always have 5 scorers and they always have 4 shooters. Now, I'm not sure whether or not Indiana can be said to have 4 shooters out there, but they can be said to have 3 when Goody's in the lineup.
They could definitely have 4 scorers.
Yes. And that changes who you are as a basketball team, how you can run your offense, how teams have to deal with you. When they were playing earlier in the year and they were playing the 3 bigs and it just wasn't flowing, they were easier to defend, even though they probably had more pure talent on the floor.
I agree, and it has made a huge difference. The $64,000 question is, will Mike Woodson stick with this when Malik Reneau returns? And I just have a sneaking suspicion that he just won't be able to help himself. And even if he doesn't start him, it's his substitution patterns. Look what Umar Ballo has done in these last 2 games. 25-13, 17-2. Boy, you'd sure like to have that every night. And yes, if Malik Reneau came in, would he offset some of that? Yeah, but it disrupts a flow of other guys. How does this impact how the ball is being distributed otherworldly? There has to be a reason. I don't know that this is just accidental.
This is not just a size thing. Let's make sure we say that. It's not about size. It's about skill set. Because a year ago, they did not have the same issues because their big was a floor stretcher. And so you could play Reneau. And that the real problems with Indiana a year ago were not congestion. It was simply that they did not have a true point guard with Xavier Johnson missing so much of the year. And never being never once he returned being all of himself. That was the real problem with Indiana a year ago. They played 2 bigs. Mbako wasn't quite himself yet. He wasn't a fully formed college basketball player. Malik was the same player, but they had big guy who could stretch the floor, and so it wasn't the same concern. Ballo's a low post guy. He's not somebody that even you put in the high post and expect good things to happen. He's got to be around the goal to be effective. And honestly, he's not even somebody you throw the ball a lot to, expecting great things. He's somebody that gets great things done by chasing down loose rebounds and putting them back in. For the most part, he can score some singled up, but it's not his, he's not an A-level low post scorer.
No.
So that they are able to play in this circumstance. And look, if you get back to having to having Malik healthy, and you need an A-level low post scorer, then you play him at various times and take Umar out. And because you need to at the end of a game, say, you need to have him in the low post because you can throw it into him and get him fouled. And you know he's going to catch it, and you know he's going to make a good decision with the basketball because of all the things that I said before about him as a dedicated Indiana player. So he gives you a lot. He gives you a lot of versatility. He just doesn't necessarily need to play a ton with Umar in tandem. That's the problem, I think, that they had a lot earlier in this year and that they don't need to revisit.
I agree 1,000%, but I also know from history that I don't see that happening when he returns because we don't know when that's going to be. Yesterday, I had it on here, Mike Woodson talking about that very thing, and there's apparently no structural damage with anything along with Malik's knee or injury, but here's what he had to say.
Don't know when he's going to be back. It's kind of in medical's hand. I mean, he didn't tear up anything, but don't know when he's going to come back. I really don't. And I just got to follow the doctor's leads, and, you know, he's got to do what he needs to do to get back when he can, but it won't be anytime soon.
Won't be anytime soon. That last little bit, I'm like, okay, so what's been said that leads to that? But we're not going to know. But if it's not going to be anytime soon, I hate to say this, not that I wished injury to anybody, but this is maybe the best thing that could have happened to Indiana right now as far as their success. Hopefully he comes back stronger than ever. Not wishing that on him, but Indiana can take advantage of this right now because they're a team that I had taken thinking they're going to be fighting at the top to, I said, this team's not going to make the NCAA tournament. Right. And I firmly believed that from how they were playing. Well, now I'm like, okay, if they play like this, I take that back and I change my mind. This is a team that can and should make the NCAA tournament now because they're playing extraordinarily well and they're a tough team to beat.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. You know, one of the things that's compelling about Indiana's season is that look, there aren't any bad teams. We saw that last night with the double overtime game in Minnesota. There aren't any bad teams in this league, but there are teams that are lesser than others. And I think it's quite apparent from what Illinois has done in particular games, including the game that they should have won at home against Tennessee back in December, the game that they did win in Oregon. That's a terrific team and with great possibilities. Or Michigan State, as we mentioned before. There are better teams in this league, but the ones that Indiana has played to date, they began their conference season with Minnesota. They had Rutgers, which is really struggling for various reasons. Now, next up, they have USC at home. So they're getting the chance to build that they kind of sort of forfeited through the non-conference season. The opportunity to build a winning formula that clearly wasn't there after they went to the Bahamas or after they opened the league with their two games, the win I mentioned over Minnesota and then the loss at Nebraska. Even the Chattanooga game, it still wasn't there. They didn't have a obvious formula, but the last couple of games, they're starting to look like they have a formula. And now over these next few, they have USC at Iowa and Illinois at home. Now, USC gives you another chance, like I said, to build a winning formula. And then you have two games that are challenging in different ways. Iowa, because they're going to put up their 80, give or take. It's going to, like, that's their baseline. They're going to score 80 on you, and then you got to score more than whatever if they go to 85, you got to score 86. If they go to 90, you got to score 91. They're going to score. They're an amazing offensive basketball team. They are not an elite defensive team, but they're playing at home. So you have to be ready. Iowa is one of those teams that still has a pulse. I know it's early, but they're one of those teams that coming out of non-conference doesn't have an NCAA tournament resume, doesn't give you that feel, but they still are in the fight. They are. And that games like that are what would give them life. So you have to be ready for that. And then, as I mentioned before, Illinois trucks in across I-74, bringing probably the best pure talent in the league, roster-wise, as good as anybody has, and playing very well right now with a lot of belief and a lot of variety. It's not always the same guy who delivers for them. They have a pretty established hierarchy, but they have a lot of guys who can step up. And hey, on your scouting report, remember when you said all these other guys were going to hurt you? I'm hurting you tonight. So it's a really interesting series of games for the Hoosiers. And if they can get out of it at 2-1, then they really have some momentum.
No doubt about that. And I think another benefactor of this has been Mackenzie Mbako. He has just been kind of floating, treading water, I guess is the best way to put it. He's been there, but he's not really been, standing out. Well, he has been standing out these last couple of games against Penn State and the Palestra, which that's a great road win for Indiana. I talked yesterday that Indiana has to steal some road wins to be in the Big Ten race. And that's one of those. That's a big time road win against a team that has beaten some good teams. Mackenzie Mbako goes for 20 points, 7 of 13 shooting, 4 of 8 from behind the 3-point line, 2 of 2 at the free throw line. He grabs 4 rebounds, dishes out a couple of assists. Man, you'll take that every day and twice on Sunday from that guy.
Yeah, he's been outstanding in those games. The 2 Big Ten games since we resumed competition in the conference, he's been outstanding. And exactly the player Indiana needs him to be what we're talking about, to be a team that is relevant to the NCAA tournament pursuit, that maybe even pursues, I still don't see them winning it, but pursues the Big Ten championship. If you're in the hunt for the Big Ten championship, there's nothing you can't do within the confines of this season. If you could win the Big Ten tournament, you could advance deep into the NCAAs. That if you can compete in this league, it's not the SEC of 2024-25, but it's the second best conference in college basketball this season. And if you can compete in this league, you can do a lot in March.
Someone asked, curious if Mike would agree with this statement. SEC basketball is what SEC football thinks it is.
That's a great question from Andy. I will tell you this. One of the interesting things about that question is that SEC football schedules like as if they don't have to prove anything to anybody. They all those Mercers and Citadels every November. It's just maddening. They really don't. Meanwhile, in the Big Ten, you're playing Michigan and they're telling you Michigan's not a hard game, but you're playing Mercer. I mean, that's just. But one of the genius things about the SEC's basketball is how they schedule. I don't know that anybody sat down and said, "Here's how we're going to do this," but it would shock me if no one did, because it was just perfectly designed. It's what the Big Ten, what the Big East, back when they had 16 teams and they had to schedule every year with 16 teams. Back in the early part of the century, they came up with what they called tiered scheduling. And if they expected you to be significant, UConn, Pitt under Ben Howland and Jamie Dixon, Syracuse, those teams all played double games against one another. And then as few games as possible against the then DePaul, Seton Hall, Providence, which were at the bottom of the league. And the teams at the bottom of the league all played each other twice because it helped them get some wins. And what that led to was it didn't diminish any of the teams at the top because they were able to handle it. And down at the bottom, It made them look a little bit more attractive. Now, what the SEC seems to have done to me is transport that to non-conference scheduling. Because you look at Auburn's schedule, and they played everybody short of the Knicks. They're just a ridiculous schedule. Alabama was pretty much the same. Florida, I'm getting yelled at every week by Florida fans for seeding their team third or fourth. We're 13-0. We're fourth in the poll. We're great in Ken Palm. Yeah, but you haven't beaten anybody. You have one quality win. You beat Carolina on a neutral floor barely. Carolina's not even in my field. You've got nothing done, but you're 13-0, and you got good power rankings, and that makes everybody else look good. If they beat you, like Kentucky, quad 1 win on Saturday, even though it was in their gym. High quad 1 win because Florida comes in as like number 4 in the net or whatever it was. It's ingenious. And then at the bottom of the league, Missouri did play Kansas, and they did play in Illinois, and they played Memphis, but that was it. And they won every other game they played, and they pulled the upset against Kansas on a neutral floor in Kansas City. South Carolina played almost no one. Did get Clemson in their gym and beat them. So all this makes the league look really good. Now, when I say that, you have to win the games. And Oklahoma did beat Michigan. It was close, but they did. And Florida did beat Carolina. It was close, but they did. They didn't have to do that a lot, but when they had that opportunity, they did it. So that's why the SEC is really special. It is extraordinary, but it also was ingenious. Whether there was a plan or whether it was all by accident, I still haven't ascertained that. But that's why the SEC looks like it does now. If they had scheduled haphazardly, they would still be the best league. And they probably would have won 85% of their games. As they did it, they won 89% of their games, which I've never seen before. I've never seen a conference go out and win 89% of their non-conference games.
Yeah, they are without question the strongest league going right now, and headed by the number one. Well, they actually have the number 1 and number 2, but the number 1 is actually Auburn. This is one thing I don't get about the stupid AP voting. Everybody knows that Auburn is the best team in the country right now. I think they know that they're better than Tennessee, but because Tennessee magically vaulted to that spot, unless they do something, they're not going to get moved. I'm like, well, that's ignorant. Why not? Why are you not voting for the best team, which is Auburn with Johnny Broom and all of that? But it matters not. It just shows I'm like, why is that thinking here? That goes right back to the CFP. That same line of thinking, wrong line of thinking. I'm like, why? Just do what it is, say what it is, vote what it is. And so it's for whatever reason, there's this goofy mindset in sports when it comes to
it's poll mindset. It is. And it's why I refuse to vote and don't pay attention to the polls, because the fact that Auburn is by far, Tennessee is a very, very good team. But they
lost to Indiana, as a matter of fact, at Tennessee in a scrimmage.
They are an excellent team, but they are one of the teams that did not schedule the hardest schedule. Now, again, as I said, they got very few opportunities where they had to be great. And when they went to Illinois, they played well enough to win. Illinois kind of handed it to them. That maybe kind of is mitigating it too much because they did hand it to them twice. But they did win the game. They were in the game and they did win it. They were excellent. But they didn't do what Auburn did. Auburn played everybody that they could get on a floor with, and they handled everybody they could get on a floor with except Duke at Cameron. That's it. That they are on my bracket every week. If I could have 1 seed, because that's what it really is, like no one else is close to them. They are so far and away the overall number 1 right now that it's an insult to them to put anybody else on their line relative to accomplishment.
Oh, man.
And so how you could then look at that and vote Tennessee as the number 1 team in college basketball, it's just ridiculous.
Tennessee will not end up even being a 2 seed.
That's an interesting statement. I can't say for sure because I know what the field is, and I don't love the teams behind them. But I do, or a lot of the teams behind them. When I'm looking at Oregon as a 2, right now with two home losses already.
Oh, they're going to get. I think they're going to drop. They are.
Yeah, I think they
maybe-
will too.
They've showed some cracks. It is Tuesday to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. The great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network is with us, and you can catch him. How many nights a week on the Big Ten right now?
BTN, you'll find me every Saturday, save one, from now until the end of the regular season. You'll find me in the studio, often with Rafael, my buddy Rafael, who we did Big Ten basketball and beyond with for 3 years, I believe we did it together. So that's when you'll find me there. I'm also on FS1, depending on the night, some pregame, some postgame. It's different occasions. It depends on whether we have a pregame or postgame show. And so I'm on periodically there. And then every Tuesday morning on Indiana Sports Beat, man.
Yes. Heck yeah. Love it, baby. Love it. Tonight in the Big Ten, Nebraska is at Iowa, Michigan at UCLA. That is a very interesting game. Both of those are on Peacock. You all can wide amongst yourselves. But boy, that Michigan at UCLA, that should be an interesting game.
You know, I will say this about Peacock. I did a piece last December. I have Peacock because they have Premier League soccer, and I'm those who follow me on Twitter know I'm a fan of Liverpool FC, and so I did an article about 10 reasons that you should get that you can benefit from getting Peacock, because they had an NFL playoff game. They had I think they had Kansas City versus Miami in the NFL playoffs last year. And so here's what you could get if you subscribe to Peacock, is what I wrote about. So as you go through Big Ten basketball, I do believe the Big Ten was one of the 10 reasons that you should get it, or that are one of the 10 ways you could benefit if you do get it, I guess I should say. And so this is another night where if you want to watch the best games in the Big Ten, and they're both really compelling. And Nebraska is right now putting an NCAA tournament resume, and they have to go on the road to Iowa, which Iowa is as fun to watch as any team in this league. And then that heavyweight showdown, it's really interesting because UCLA's defense has been excellent, consistently excellent this season. Their offense has struggled often, and they have to kind of scrape it over the line a lot of times because they just don't have a reliable primary scorer. It's always, okay, whose night is it, or what matchup is best? It's one of those two things every night for UCLA at the high major level. Maybe when they play UC Santa Barbara or somebody, they can talent it out. But in this league, they have to work for every bucket they get. So
no Jaime Jaquez.
There's no Jaime, man. If they had Jaime, they would be dealing. Jaime was something that they have lacked over the last couple of years. When he played for them, he was a star. He was a superstar, and they haven't been able to replace him or Tiger Campbell. Those two guys, they need another two guys like that. If they do, they'll get their program back to really rolling, because defensively, these guys have bought in for UCLA. And the challenge that Michigan presents with the 2 7-footers, that's unlike anything anybody else in college basketball has right now. No one else is able to put 2 7-footers on the floor that have completely differing skill sets. You know, down low, Vlad Golden, with the size and the power that he showed helping to take Florida Atlantic to the Final Four in 23, still consistently physically powerful down there. Then Danny Wolf, able to play on the move at 7 feet. There's no one else in college basketball like him. He's the reason that Michigan can play this way, to be able to play on the move at 7 feet with ball skills, able to hit the boards, passing. He absolutely gets them through. Now, what they don't have at Michigan, they don't have elite point guard play. And that's why Wolf is so important, because he complements the absence of that Xavier Simpson playmaker that they don't have right now. That's how Michigan is able to get by without it, because Wolf is so versatile with his skill set.
The CFP returns at the end of this week. I ran us so deep in that last segment. I left us like no time, which I'm not mad about because that was awesome. But I wanted to talk more about the CFP. But Notre Dame, Penn State, we could Texas or Ohio State. The biggest thing is they're expecting snow and frigid weather in Texas at the Cotton Bowl. And that, to me, favors Ohio State. I didn't think that would be the case, but is this game played at Jerry World or is it still in the old in a Cotton Bowl stadium?
I thought that, that's a great question because I thought they'd moved it. That's an excellent question, but I remember in 2010 that they had a lot of trouble with ice and just traveling around during the Super Bowl when the Steelers played the Packers.
It's an AT&T Stadium in
okay,
Arlington,
so weather is only a factor for the travel.
Yeah, so who gives a crap? Why they even mention that?
Because there is
playing that stuff.
There is the issue of getting to the stadium. Remember, what I was going to say is they had lots of ice in Dallas for that Packers-Steelers game. And so it was hard for people to get around and because they're not used to this. It doesn't happen. Okay, so I'm mentioning what that happened 14 years ago. So they're not set up to handle it like they are here in Pittsburgh or in Boston or somewhere like that. So it could be problematic.
All right. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this snowy Tuesday. And we are so fortunate to always be joined by one of the greats in the business, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, from the Big Ten Network, and many others that fall under that umbrella that allows us to get to cover college basketball in some of the best ways possible. There's not a mind that has been around any longer, but also the college football world. And college football has become so much fun because of the expanded playoffs, because of the portal, not as much NIL, but the portal, allowing, I don't like everything about it, but it has also made it what it is right now. It has given it this, the most, what's the word I'm looking, feeling of parity that we've seen, but there are still the best at the top, I think. And that's fine because you have that. You have that in the NFL. You have that in the NBA. There are teams that are just having the great years. Doesn't matter why. There are just teams that are just better than everybody else. It doesn't. You go back how far you want to go back. Go back to the Golden State Warriors. Go back to the Lakers. Go back to Bird and the Celtics. They were just better. It's just how it is. And right now, Ohio State, they're just better. Penn State, they're just better. Texas, they're a good team, but we're going to see how much better they really are. And then Notre Dame has fought to get to where they are. I was actually just looking at RJ Young. I don't know him, and I'm not picking on him. I just happened to pull it up. But with Fox, his bracket projection, bust. He's got 4. He had Oregon, Clemson, Arizona State, and Georgia making it. They're all gone, and that's nothing. But that just shows you because that's not a pick that would have been outlandish. But none of those teams are making it. But
I feel like any pick that didn't have Ohio State in it was a little outlandish.
Exactly.
I mean, I know Michigan was a disaster, but if you watch that team play all year, they were the best team in college basketball, and that's kind of why this idea of how we picked champions, so to speak, champions. I have to use the air quotes on that in college football forever. You're allowed to have a bad day in sports. That's how it works. Now you can't have a bad day in the championship, like if you're at Wimbledon, it's hard to have a bad day and survive. You certainly can't have a bad day against the wrong opponent and advance to the next round. But you can have a bad day in Cincinnati on your way to the U.S. Open and still win the U.S. Open. That's how sports work. The Steelers lost 4 games in a row on the way into these playoffs, and they'll probably lose on the weekend, but they might not. That's how sports are supposed to work. You shouldn't have had to be perfect in the past, because that standard, if that were the standard, then why didn't every perfect team get a championship? Because they didn't. And why did any team that wasn't perfect get a championship? That was always the problem. Now you have a real way to establish a champion. And that to me is what has made this college football season so exhilarating, Jim, because I remember in November sitting down at the end of a college football day and watching Texas A&M play at Auburn. And I wouldn't have watched a minute of that in any prior college football season, because Auburn wasn't any good at all. I think they came into the game at like 5-5, and Texas A&M was 8-2, so they would have been out of it. So why would I have ever watched? But I watched and I was riveted. And it was the same with Georgia and Georgia Tech a week later or 2 weeks later. That game, all of a sudden, because Georgia Tech stepped up and had a great day, went above who they really were, and Georgia played a little bit down. What do we have? 8 overtimes, something like that, 7 overtimes, and we were all watching. And the only people that would have watched in the past are absolute diehards, Georgia fans, Georgia Tech fans, and bettors. They would have been the only ones. But this time, all of us had a stake in it, because if Georgia had lost, then there's a good chance that that they wouldn't have made the field. If they would have had a chance to automatically get in with the SEC championship, they'd already qualified. But that would have dinged their non-conference or their at-large resume. And that's why we watch a lot of games in early March between, I don't know, let's say this year it might be Vanderbilt and Georgia. Like if they happen to play in early March, we'd be all like, yeah, let's watch that, because whoever loses that's going to have a tough time getting in. Whoever wins is going to have a great time getting in. That's what makes sports wonderful. Why do you think like 29 million people watched the Vikings play the Lions on Sunday night? So close to 29 million people, because there was consequence to that. That's what college football lacked forever. It's what they have now. And it's why they can't guarantee automatic bids beyond the champion for any league. Obviously, the leagues that we're talking about are the Big Ten and the SEC. But they can't do that, because they will wreck November by doing that.
Yes.
So you're going to get the bids anyway.
Then it doesn't matter anymore. You can, the need to have to win games, to have to play well, it goes away. I agree with you 1,000%. You shouldn't have to. And I think the SEC's poor performance in the postseason this year really shows why. You had a Michigan team that was decimated. They did not have their best players. Alabama pretty much had everybody, and they lost again. They lost 2 straight. They've lost to Michigan. They lost to Oklahoma, where they only scored 3 points. What they score in the Michigan game? Like 13?
Yeah, it was. I think the final score was around 19-13, 16-13, something like that.
Yeah, so they scored 16 points in their last 2 games.
With Jalen Milroe at quarterback, who was a 2-year starter. But if you keep it as it is, and if you want to expand it to 14 because you think that's fine, I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, that's going to happen. But
don't guarantee bids for leagues, because then you take away that incentive. If you're the SEC, if you go to 14, you're going to get 4 most years. You might have gotten 4 this year with a couple different results. The Big Ten, same thing. They're going to get 3 to 4 every year that this is, because they have, this is going to shock you, Jim. They have the best teams, the best players, the best coaches. Both of those leagues do, because again, they have tradition and money. So they're always going to be better than most of the ACC and the Big 12. Now, the ACC and Big 12 might produce a great team here and there.
Just like this year. It was just pretty much that. But I hope that this year's performance by the SEC has shown even the SEC, Greg Sankey, he would never admit it, but you do not deserve automatic bids, because that means that either Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss would have automatically been in this thing. Alabama showed they absolutely did not belong. South Carolina got beat as well to a team that didn't even get mentioned for being in part of the college football playoffs. But and I don't want to hear this. Oh well, it did what bull. I guess it just means more to the Big Ten. But and I don't know what the record is if it's changed. They were 4-1 against the SEC in postseason play so far. So great year for them. What is up next for you, my man?
Yeah, I've got a lot of things I'm working on. Column, an NFL column, a college football column, and then a big project that I'll have next week on the NFL. So lots to look forward to at TSN Mike. And then I will be in on Saturday at BTN. We'll have a pregame show. We have a noon kick tip off. And then we have a post-game show, and we'll have the big show at the end of the day, wrap it all up.
One thing I meant to ask you and I didn't quickly, where is Indiana in your bracket right now?
They are not in my bracket yet, but they are before they were not even under consideration. Now they're knocking on the door.
I agree. I understand. And that's what it's going to take this for the Hoosiers to get back into those graces. Mike DeCourcy, make sure you are giving him a follow and keeping up with his free content at The Sporting News, people. The Sporting News is one of the rare, if not only, national big-time publication that's free. Is that right? I mean,
that is one of the few. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the oldest and most established. Mike, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. He stuck over extra today. We love him and couldn't do it without you, brother. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Jim. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. The great Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.